On September 29, 2024, a chemical warehouse in Conyers, Georgia caught fire and sent a toxic chlorine cloud so massive that 90,000 people were told to lock their doors and seal their windows. Sensors at Georgia Tech, 17 miles away, detected a 1,400-fold increase in chlorine particles drifting through the air. The EPA measured chlorine levels 22 times above the safe action limit, and when federal investigators finally got inside the wreckage, they discovered something that should terrify every American homeowner. The company had been running a permanent fire watch for months before the disaster because they already knew the building was dangerous. They knew, and they did nothing to fix it. That company makes almost every pool chemical on the shelf at your local hardware store. We are going to show you how one corporation quietly bought every brand in the aisle, how their factories keep exploding, and why the government keeps letting them do it. If you have walked down the pool chemical aisle at Home Depot or Lowe's recently, you probably believe you are choosing between competing brands. You see names like BioGuard, Aqua Chem, Pool Time, Natural Chemistry, and even a product with the Clorox logo that says Clorox Pool Spa. That is an illusion. A single corporation called KIK Consumer Products owns or manufactures virtually every one of those brands. BioGuard, SpaGuard, Omni, ProGuard, Aqua Chem, Pool Time, Spa Time, Natural Chemistry, C-Clear, Aquapill, Coral Seas, Pro Series, Spa Essentials, Pool Essentials, and even the Clorox Pool brand, which KIK manufactures under a licensing deal. That is more than 20 brands controlled by one company, spanning every price point and every retail channel in the country. When you pick up the cheap bucket at Walmart and compare it to the premium tub at the specialty pool store, you are very often comparing two products made in the same factory by the same workers for the same parent corporation. The entire aisle is a stage set designed to create the appearance of competition where none exists. And here is the part that should concern every pool owner in America. The factories where these chemicals are produced have a 20-year history of catastrophic explosions, toxic gas releases, and mass evacuations that keeps repeating itself. And the pattern continues because the chemical at the center of each one of these incidents is not even covered by federal safety regulations. To understand how one company cornered this market, you have to go back to 1993, when a Canadian entrepreneur named Jeff Nodland started a small bleach manufacturing operation in Concord, Ontario, with 100 employees. The company was called KIK Custom Products. For the first decade, it did nothing but make private label bleach, quietly acquiring 8 bleach plants across North America. Then Nodland pivoted into pool chemicals. In 2013, KIK signed a licensing deal with Clorox to manufacture Clorox Pool Spa products. But the deal that changed everything closed on December 31st, 2013, when KIK purchased BioLab from the Chemtura Corporation for $300 million in cash. BioLab was described at the time as the largest supplier of residential pool chemicals in the world. That single acquisition gave KIK 2 massive manufacturing plants, one in Conyers, Georgia, and one in Westlake, Louisiana, plus operations across 4 continents. KIK kept buying. They picked up Sunbelt Pool Chemicals, German brands, and in January 2019, they purchased NC Brands, adding Natural Chemistry, C-Clear, and several more names to the portfolio. Today, KIK reports revenue exceeding $1.6 billion. The company is not publicly traded. It is owned by Centerbridge Partners, a New York private equity firm managing roughly $38 billion. And the chemicals rolling out of their 2 main factories are about to become the center of one of the worst industrial safety records in America. The disaster timeline starts on May 25, 2004. At 4 in the morning, an explosion ripped through a BioLab warehouse in Conyers, Georgia, containing approximately 12.5 million pounds of pool chemicals. The fire sent a plume of chlorine gas hundreds of feet into the air. Over 150 firefighters responded. 28 people were hospitalized. Toxic runoff contaminated a nearby lake, causing a massive fish kill. Interstate 20 was shut down in both directions. Chemtura, BioLab's parent at the time, eventually settled with the EPA for $785,000 in civil penalties during its bankruptcy proceedings. A separate $7 million settlement went to affected residents. You would think an explosion of that magnitude would be a wake-up call. It was just the beginning. In June 2015, a fire at the same Conyers complex injured 6 firefighters. In June 2016, the same type of chemical began decomposing after being exposed to water, forcing evacuations within a 1-mile radius. Every single incident followed the same pattern. A chemical called trichloroisocyanuric acid, known as TCCA, got wet. When water contacts TCCA, it triggers a violent exothermic reaction that generates chlorine gas and intense heat. The fix is simple: keep the chemical dry. But BioLab kept failing at that one basic requirement. And in August 2020, Mother Nature made the consequences of that failure catastrophic. On August 27, 2020, Category 4 Hurricane Laura slammed into the Gulf Coast and tore the roof off BioLab's Westlake, Louisiana plant. Rainwater poured onto more than 1 million pounds of stored TCCA. The chemical reaction generated an estimated 450,000 pounds of chlorine gas. The toxic cloud spread across the Lake Charles area. Interstate 10 was closed for over 28 hours. The fire burned for roughly 50 hours. The Chemical Safety Board later found that a 2010 hazard analysis had recommended evaluating whether buildings could withstand hurricane-force winds. BioLab never followed through, and this is the detail that matters for anyone who owns a swimming pool in America. That single plant had been producing approximately 1/3 of the entire nation's supply of trichlorchlorine tablets. Only 3 domestic manufacturers even exist, and BioLab was by far the largest. When the hurricane destroyed that plant, the supply chain collapsed overnight. A 50-pound bucket of trichlor tablets that had been stable at $75 to $85 for 2 decades jumped to over $110 by the fall of 2020. By 2022, the same bucket cost over $220. The price had more than tripled. Wholesale distributors rationed purchases to 1 or 2 buckets per week. Big box retailers were sold out entirely. Some stores restricted purchases to existing loyalty card customers only. Public pools across the country delayed opening or close for the entire summer season because they simply could not find chlorine at any price. One pool service owner in Texas calculated that doing the exact same work as the prior year would cost him close to $100,000 more. He called chlorine the new toilet paper. That is the real-world consequence of monopoly. When one company controls too much of a critical supply chain, and that supply chain breaks, there is no backup. There is no competitor waiting to fill the gap. There is just empty shelves and tripled prices. But while pool owners were scrambling to keep their water clean, BioLab's negligence was far from over. Just 18 days after the Louisiana plant was destroyed, a leaking pipe at the Conyers, Georgia facility allowed water to contact TCCA on the floor. The chlorine vapor cloud shut down a 4-mile stretch of Interstate 20 for over 6 hours. 9 firefighters were hospitalized. BioLab rebuilt the Louisiana plant at a cost of up to $250 million. It reopened in November 2022. 4 months later, in March 2023, a chlorine gas leak sent a toxic cloud over the Westlake area and shut down Interstate 10 again. More than half of the emergency alert sirens in the parish were still broken from the hurricane 3 years earlier. No audible warnings sounded. Then came September 29, 2024. An employee conducting fire watch at the Conyers warehouse heard a popping sound at 5 in the morning and realized stored chemicals were wet. By 6:30, visible flames appeared. The first fire was extinguished, but a second, larger fire broke out before 12:30 in the afternoon and destroyed the warehouse. What investigators found next changed the entire scope of the disaster. The warehouse contained approximately 13.9 million pounds of solid oxidizers. When BioLab applied for building permits in 2019, they told Rockdale County the anticipated inventory would be about 6.2 million pounds. The actual amount was more than double that figure. Nearly 3 million pounds were stored outside the firewall. The sprinkler system had been corroding since TCCA storage began, with damage documented within weeks. A former BioLab engineer told investigators he replaced at least 40 sprinkler heads. Emergency sprinkler repairs were conducted just 9 days before the fire, and federal investigators confirmed that BioLab had established a permanent fire watch 2 to 3 months before the disaster. Employees were stationed around the clock specifically to watch for fire because the company knew the conditions were dangerous and chose to monitor the problem rather than fix it. The human toll was immediate. 17,000 people were evacuated. Roughly 90,000 residents across Rockdale County were placed under shelter-in-place orders lasting approximately 19 days. Nightly curfews forced people indoors as temperature inversions trapped the toxic plume near the ground. 15,000 students were forced into remote learning for 3 weeks. A 911 dispatcher who took the initial call was recorded saying 4 words that summarized 2 decades of failure. It is always BioLab. More than 29,000 people submitted compensation claims through BioLab's program. An independent environmental activist found dioxin levels on a car windshield in Conyers that were 752% higher than levels found in East Palestine, Ohio after the Norfolk Southern train derailment. And in January 2026, investigative reporters at Georgia Public Broadcasting revealed that the fire may have produced hexavalent chromium, the carcinogenic compound made famous by the film Erin Brockovich. An internal Georgia environmental risk assessor had warned that the extreme heat of the fire could have converted relatively harmless chromium into its cancer-causing form. A toxicologist confirmed that the highly oxidizing chemicals in the fire made this conversion likely. Despite the internal warning, state cleanup plans did not include testing for hexavalent chromium, and the residents of Conyers were never told. For all of this, for 20 years of serial explosions and toxic releases and mass evacuations, OSHA fined BioLab $61,473 for the 2024 fire. That is the largest OSHA fine the company has ever received. Total OSHA fines across 2 decades of disasters amount to roughly $130,000 against a company generating billions in revenue. To put that in perspective, that is less than the cost of a single backyard swimming pool. The reason the penalties are so small is a regulatory gap that the Chemical Safety Board first identified in 2002, over 20 years ago. TCCA, the exact chemical at the center of every single BioLab disaster, is not covered by the EPA's Risk Management Program Rule or OSHA's Process Safety Management Standard. The most dangerous chemical in the pool industry is exempt from the safety programs designed to prevent exactly these kinds of catastrophes. The CSB has recommended closing this gap 3 times. It remains open. Rockdale County filed a federal lawsuit in October 2024 seeking the permanent shutdown of the Conyers facility. The county commissioner declared that BioLab's risk to the community far outweighs any benefit, and said she would fight until her last breath to have them removed. 21 separate class action lawsuits have been consolidated in federal court, led by the same attorneys who handled the East Palestine train derailment case. In May 2025, BioLab announced it would permanently cease manufacturing at the Conyers plant, though it continues operating as a distribution center. The community where this company operated for over 50 years is a majority black neighborhood where residents now live in the 95th percentile for air toxics cancer risk, according to the EPA's own screening data. A 3-year public health study has been launched by Morehouse School of Medicine to track long-term effects, and the pool chemical aisle at your local store still looks exactly the same as it did before any of this happened. 20 brands that all lead back to one company, one set of factories, and one pattern of decisions. If you own a pool and you want to reduce your dependence on this monopoly, the fastest growing alternative is a saltwater chlorine generator. These systems convert ordinary table salt into chlorine through electrolysis, eliminating the need for manufactured tablets entirely. The saltwater generator market has grown to nearly $1.5 billion, and close to 70% of new residential pools in America now use salt systems. They do not eliminate chlorine from your pool. They eliminate your dependence on the company that keeps letting its factories explode. Other options include UV sanitation systems and ozone generators. All of them still require some supplemental chlorine, but they dramatically reduce the amount you need to buy. The next time you pick up a bucket of pool chemicals, flip it over and read the fine print on the back. Check who actually manufactures it. Odds are it leads back to KIK Consumer Products and their BioLab division. The brands are different, the labels are different, the prices are different, but the company behind them is the same one that stored 14 million pounds of reactive chemicals in a building with a leaking roof, a corroding sprinkler system, and a permanent fire watch, and called it a plan. Do not let the illusion of choice on the shelf make you forget who you are actually buying from. If you found this story important, hit subscribe so we can keep investigating the companies hiding behind everyday products, because the next aisle over might have the exact same problem.